people ask you, can I use this grazing tool? It's the new version is going to be called Grazing Tool 3.0 because there's quite a bit new in it. And yes, you tell them you can use it, but you got to have Microsoft Office 2013 or newer, or it'll hang up. Some of the newer formulas are in there, so that is one constraint that I do know of. And then, so, you know, I worked a long time for NRCS, worked with range people and ranchers. Why do we develop a plan? We try to record the present condition, right? And then we estimate the land's carrying capacity, and we estimate the benefits of improved harvest efficiency, trying to sell prescribed grazing to clients. We do that so that we can think through the movement of livestock through different paddocks and that, and to record progress. So there's a lot of reasons why we do something like this grazing plan that I'm going to show you. We just kind of got to keep those in mind as we go through this. My point in all this was to make it as efficient as possible for you guys to do that, and hopefully the time you save doing all this documenting and planning, you can put into doing field inventory and working with producers on follow-up. That's my hope and my dream. I don't know if it'll come true. It seems to, the more we use the computer, the more we're in the office. But I hope that is true. We can spend our saved time out in the field. So what's a plan consist of? It consists of a field inventory, a forage inventory, an animal inventory, and a planned grazing schedule, and the record of use. So I'm going to kind of walk you through those steps on how this tool works. This tool isn't on the NRCS website yet. Got just a little tweaking to do, and then it'll be on there. That depends on my discussion with Emily when we're done here about how long it'll be. But I would expect it from everything I've seen and talked to people. I get good comments back. It'll be on there very shortly, right?
Okay. Sure.
She's shaking her head.
Hope so.
It's up and down, so that's yes. Okay. So I've got the tool on my computer. It's Grazing Tool 3.0. When I open the tool up, some of you have seen some of this before, so you'll just have to bear with me, but I want to kind of take it through in steps here. So now the tool opens up with a screen, and the screen is asking you how do you want to get data for the tool. So you guys can see the screen now, and I can get it from Toolkit. So I would just click this, big button, if I want to get my data from Toolkit. I can get it from Web Soil Survey now, and we got a method that you can upload a shapefile of the entire operating unit or of all the fields of rangeland and pasture, however you want to do it, but a shapefile with multi-fields, and upload it to Web Soil Survey, and you can get the data from Web Soil Survey without using this in Toolkit, is my point, and having basically the same data. Also, you can open it without adding data. That would be, did I previously save data in the spreadsheet? I don't want to put new data in. I want to open it with existing data. So I'm going to click on Open Without Adding Data. It's checking to see if, it's double checking to see if there's data in here. It says no field data currently exists. Click OK to continue. So boom, it opens up. All right, so of course we fill in everything that's yellow, and I won't go to the trouble of taking the time to do that, but I will fill in a few of these yellow blanks. I want to point out, though, that there are instructions and helpful tips, and comment boxes are all over the place telling you what to consider when you complete a cell, or a column of cells. So we opened this without adding any data. I'm going to put a couple of things in here. We want to identify the resource concern and impact. Generally what we're usually concerned with is, or the producer is concerned with, is livestock production limitation, that inadequate feed and forage. And purpose, well, typically, and I'm just saying what they typically are, is to improve and maintain the quality of forages for grazing and browsing animals, health and productivity. So, you can fill that out. You can put in your information about the legal description of any federal and off-site leases. We don't have a lot of that, but some guys have those, so you can enter the AUMs from those. And then you can put in how, if he's going to purchase some hay, you can, let's say he's going to purchase alfalfa grass hay. This is why I don't want to fill too much of this out, how slow I type. So here he's going to purchase 100 tons of hay. Well, conversion factor, what's that? Well, here's a little helpful hint for all hays, 2.5. So that's what the help cells are for, so that comment boxes, so that you can see what we're talking about in some of this. All right. So I'm going to drop down to the inventoried lands, owned and operated. Okay, so this thing you can just fill it out manually, and that's one of the best things about this grazing tool is how the different ways you can use this. You can just simply type in, I got track 20, I got field 1, I can type in a land use, it doesn't matter what you say. On the other hand, in this case, I'm going to put range in here. If I use the words range or rangeland, I got to think about it. It's rangeland. If I use the word rangeland, then I can make something else work here in a little bit, okay? And ecological site, I can put that in, or I can put what do I want to say?
Or just species mix, or?
I could put a species. I could put the when we used to do the percent similarity index. Thank you. I could put that in here. I could put whatever I want because I'm just typing in information here. Right now I'm going to leave this blank and show you that I don't have to have anything in there, or I can use it in a different way here also. Acres, okay, I got 100 acres in this piece of rangeland. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put tract 20. I'm just going to do 2 fields. Field 2, and this is pasture land. And then maybe I've got a field 3 and it's a piece of cropland, and so I'm just going to show you that I'm going to use that for aftermath grazing, that type of thing. So just showing that you can put you can type in your information. I can actually just type in the normal AUMs. Let me back up one little step. These columns right here, which are the first 5 columns, they're yellow. You can do what you want with those. Type things in, sort, delete, you can do what you want. Beyond that, then these typically have some formulas in them. And so you kind of want to be a little careful of what you do with these over here. So I've got this. I could type in, even though this is a formula, but don't worry about it. You can type in your normal AUMs for that rangeland is 1.0, 2.3, whatever, if you want. And everything will be calculated. You have to add a growth curve. Growth curves are listed up at the top of the sheet, and you could pick one of those that best matches your piece of rangeland. It might be number 2, 75% cool, 25% warm. So having said that, we're going to go back here. That's going to take a while to refresh. Okay. We're going to go back down to setting up this to look up your normal AUMs for you. Okay, well, how would I do that? Well, if I can still type my fields in that, But if I go to the very top and set my MLRA, okay, which is what I'm doing now, and we've got a little bit of a lag on the screen, and so I'm trying to at least slow down to the point where you can see what I'm doing. If I get too far ahead, somebody can kind of slow me down. I'm going to pick 102A is where I'm at here in Brookings. This takes a little bit to set up the whole spreadsheet for 102A, but this little time it takes, I think you'll see is worth it. Most of you range conservationists help work on the project to enter the ESIS data and pasture forage suitability group data into this spreadsheet. At least got it organized to put in here. We're going to now use that by saying out down here, clicking plant community. I want to use the plant communities in the spreadsheet is what I'm saying to it when I click that button. Okay. And so having clicked that, if I have rangeland and a site, oh, I got to put a site in. I got to think about this. I might, over the years, it used to be, we used to say rangeland, now it's range. So you want to use the word range in there. Okay, so if I pick a site, now these are only sites in MLRA 102A. And so I got a sandy site, let's just say. My guess is it's the same with pasture. I don't want land in there. We must have changed those definitions to just pasture here about 5 years ago or so. All right, so now I can put, I got a limey upland pasture. And what I want to point out, and there are no choices for cropland. Why? Because we didn't put any data in here for cropland, obviously. So we'll deal with that in a moment. So on the sandy range site, 100 acres, what's going to pop in here under your plant community is always the least producing plant community. That is, and they're going to be in order, least in the top. Each succeeding one is a higher producing plant community. So I want you to look at the normal AUMs over here, and it is right now looking up 0.51 for Kentucky bluegrass sedge plant community. I'm going to switch it to the next one, little blue stem needlegrass, and you'll see that it looks up 0.63 AUMs. And every time I pick a higher producing plant community, the normal AUMs change. So the point of all of that is if you type your own fields in, you can use your MLRA to look up ecological sites still and forage suitability groups. It can populate the AUMs for you. All you need to do would be have gone to the field and do an inventory and really basically get the plant community. Now it doesn't have, in this case, it doesn't have to be real detailed. This lists the plant communities that are listed in the ecological sites on the tech guide. Okay, and you guys are more familiar with this than probably I am, so you understand where these are coming from, where the numbers came from, and everything. So pretty straightforward. Let me set, you've got different species on the forage suitability group of limey upland, and you pick a species and it sets your AUMs. And it also, you guys put this data in, it knows the growth curve of these things, and so therefore it calculates your AUMs. Pretty handy way to use it in the almost the most simplified version you can do. I am going to show you, I'll show you these sorts when we put some additional data in. I will pop over here and show you some basic things about the animal inventory at this point. And I'm going to look at Emily and see what I missed that I wanted to talk about here.
Other than reset MLRA.
Okay, so thank you. If you decide, oops, I messed up, that type of thing, I'm not in 102A, I'm in 55C or something. The first thing you want to do is click the reset button under MLRA. That cleans it up and clears it out. Then pick your MLRA again, okay? And so that's kind of one rule just to the programming. You need to do that. The other thing down here is if I do type over the formulas in normal, I could actually do that. If I decide that my Sandy, Big Blue, I've been working in this county for 20 years and I know the normal AUM production on that Sandy site with this plant community, it's 1.0. I can actually just type that in, okay, and it recalculates the AUM. So you can do that. Once you this actually is a formula in this column for normal AUMs, okay? Once you overtype it, as you can see up at the top in the formula bar, it is not a formula anymore, it's just the number 1, okay? So that's okay. And if later you decide, oh, I messed that up, I can copy an adjacent cell. I want to copy the adjacent cell, not move the adjacent cell. Some people get on these corners and don't know, they take that symbol, the arrowed crossbar symbol, and start moving it around. That's moving a cell. Don't do that. It's just the plus symbol that can move, that can copy a cell from one spot to the next. And see, I must have messed that up. And so there we go. So I can copy those around. Be a little careful with that. Emily.
Stan asked, does this use middle or high management production for the FSGs, for the forage suitability groups?
Okay, that's a very good question. So up at the top, we have the ability in this grazing tool to change the production value that we're picking from that ESIS data or that forage suitability group data. And to change it, what I can do is click on production, and it allows me to pick high, low, or normal. Normal is the, and maybe you can help me out with the terminology. There's a particular term for that. It's not normal production, it's
rainfall.
But I tell you what, at the end of the spreadsheet under range, here actually is the data, the actual data that we're using. You don't need to go in there and all that, but it's called representative value. There we go.
Okay.
All right. So the normal is a representative value. We've converted it to AUMs. I can actually pick high or low. Why would you do that? In my thinking, if I get a whole ranch completed with all the fields inventoried and all the ecological sites identified with their plant communities, if I click on low, what it's telling me now, and I'm going to go back to where I was, forage inventory. Now it's low, set to low. If the AUM here is still the formula, I haven't overtyped it, then it will show me an AUM that is low, low production. What does that mean? That means in a drought year, you might say, a very low producing year, this is what can be expected. Okay, so why would I do this? I'd set up his whole ranch, and I would actually then, every time I do this, I'd click on that and say, you know what? If you have a real bad drought, you can expect to be as low as 203 AUMs on this whole unit. Oh, really? Yeah. And then I'd say to him, yeah, and what we're going to figure out, we're going to plan on for the future, just normal production for planning, we're up to 274. You can see that, that's 20% reduction. That type of thing. You can start talking about what would you do if you run into a really bad year. Now we're talking about a drought plan, aren't we?
That's true.
Yeah. So I think he or she needs to be aware that, oh yeah, this doesn't produce this much every year, and they know that. But here's a way to capture some numbers and percentages that, how do I plan for that? Well, I would plan for it this way. Stan, I hope I answered your question. What would I do with the high? Well, same thing happens with high. Sioux Falls had the highest rainfall, if I remember right. They were pushing the highest rainfall this year, I think, that they've ever had, is what the weatherman was saying. What does that mean for grass production? It was probably one of the highest grass producing years. So clicking on high would tell me if I have a really good year, what can I expect? And then they can kind of think about what would I do if I have a really good year. Maybe I'll skip grazing fields 1 and 2 and I'll just hay them, and maybe I can sell it, or maybe I'll use it, or maybe I'll whatever. You start planning. So okay, I hope I covered that. There's some other things up here that I probably didn't talk about and should. It's set to 100% normal growth. That's a little different than high, medium, and low, but I can tweak this one. I can say I want 110% of normal growth. Why would I, or 90% or whatever? Why would I use this in my county? Like I said, when I was in a county about 3 years, I had a good feeling for the production. At least I thought I did. If you're there 20 years, you will have a very good feeling for the production. In your county, maybe these numbers aren't exactly right. Maybe you want to kind of run with 95, or maybe you want to run with 105. It's a way to tweak this to get more accurate even, okay? And there are other uses for it. And there's a bit of an explanation right here of how you would use it in the comment box. Excuse me for that. We'll do that. So it explains kind of when and how to use this, and when the changes are reflected. Harvest efficiency. Very quickly, you guys all know this, but in a present condition, many of the ranchers we work with, they aren't rotating their livestock. They're season-long grazers. Their harvest efficiency is probably around 25%. After we work with them in the planned condition, we may change that up to 35% because we're running through 2 or 3 times through their paddocks and so on. So that's a reason to change it. It's going to produce more grass when you increase your rotation and your speed and that kind of a thing. So your harvest efficiency goes up. Here's a way to quantify that. Then in addition to that, I've made it so that if I click on this edit by row, I can actually, it's set to 125, but every single row or every field now I can manipulate. I don't want this field to have harvest efficiency of 25. I want it to have 35. So, but I want the other field to have 25, so I just leave it blank. So it's a way to say I'm only working with these first 4 fields with the guy as an experiment here on a grazing system. The other 8 fields, he's going to continue to graze like he normally is. It's a way to separate out the fields and change harvest efficiency or percent normal production individually. Okay, so let's go through one where we actually add data. Okay, normally you could open this up, and it's going to ask you how you want to get your data. And normally, if I was using this, I would dump data into here. Okay, Toolkit, if I've already set up my fields and attributed and everything, Toolkit's a way to get your data and your soil data, your ecological site data, and all that. But it's becoming harder and harder to use. Simply, I've heard, because once you get it in there, it's locked into a contract and it's hard to manipulate, and lots of issues with that. And the way we contract, talking to like Matt there, and it's better to have a field 1 than it is to have your field that you fenced out into 10 fields. Better to have field 1 than field 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So lots of reasons why. I'm going to show you the web soil survey way to do it. Okay, so this really comes down to using it for planning, so I can tweak it and replan, and there's a lot of options here. And then just the thing about us in South Dakota, we collected this information So is your land in South Dakota? Yes. Then we're going to checking for existing data again. No field data currently exists. If currently exists, it's going to let you know so you don't write over it if you don't want to. Okay, so this opens up to the page where I'm going to use Web Soil Survey to dump in this data. Well, how does that work? All right, it's a little bit, there's a few steps to it, okay, and here are the steps. Okay, and you can read through, you can print this out, you can go through them step by step. But I'm going to show you kind of how fast and easy it is. Web Soil Survey is the link. It says to click on Start Web Soil Survey when it opens up that page. And so did it, okay. It did, I just didn't have patience. Start Web Soil Survey. Okay, so here's the way it is. You see this area of interest, okay? I'm going to slow down a little bit here to let the screen refresh to the Web Soil Survey page, because now we're on the internet. This might, okay. So now you see area of interest. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to create an area of interest from a zipped shapefile, okay? It wants to know what zip shapefile do I want to use. I'm going to browse for it. Okay. So you should see my Internet Explorer. That's not right. Windows Explorer open up, and I have it because I've been in here before. It goes to the folder that I have saved a bunch of my shapefiles, and I have zipped one called this is from Matt, thank you Matt, this Waslet grass zip shapefile. Okay, and we're going to go through how do you make that, how do you make sure it'll work and all that. We're going to do that, but we're just going to show you how this works. I am going to set that, I'm going to pick that zipped shapefile, and it's going to pop back to Web Soil Survey. I'm going to set the AOI using that zipped shapefile. And in a matter of a moment, it has identified my area with the field numbers in it because they were attributed in the shapefile, okay? And guess what? I'm almost done getting my Web Soil Survey data by clicking Soil Data Explorer and Ecological Site Assessment. It's going to create a report for me on all of those fields. I can copy this map out if I want it for a soils map. I can do a lot of things, okay? But here's the main thing that I want to do is here's my report right here that I want. I'm scrolling down below the map, and you'll see it in a second. I'll wait for you guys. We're smart enough this time to have Emily set up her computer beside here so we can see the lag on here. Okay, so the instructions say for you to start to highlight this report, but start at the first map unit symbol and highlight everything through including the 100% at the bottom. So basically you're highlighting everything in this report. And we got to get to the very bottom, and this is going to take a little while. I can speed it up, it looks like. Okay, so it's really copy. There's the 100%. Make sure that's highlighted. I'll wait till you get there. Give me a nod when they're there. Okay, we're about there. I see it now. There. I need my cursor in a blue area. I'm going to right click in a blue area and copy. Okay, now I'm going to minimize this Web Soil Survey. Right, I'm back to the Grazingtool 3.0, and at this point right here is where I right click. This is important right here, so make a note of this or pay attention. It's in the instructions. I don't want to paste it. I want to paste keep source formatting. Okay, I want this second paste. Every time you paste something into this grazing tool, you want to use that. Okay, well, here you go. There's all your data. It figures out where it needs a track and a field number. Track number is optional. Field number is required. Well, how do you know which field this was? Well, right here it says subtotals for 1. So at the bottom of your data, so all I need to do is type 1 in there and see what this one was, subtotals for 10. And I need to put the field numbers in here. Now, one other thing. This is 2. I'm only going to put numbers in here for rangeland. Why? Because this is ecological site data. All right. If any of these fields are pastures, then I'll want to go back and I'll show you how to get that report just as quick and how to use those fields as pasture fields. All right, so I'm going to go through here and put in here, this is field 3, and you can see how I'm doing this. I'm just looking down here. This is field 4. All right, so I am, for this example, I am going to 5, and this is 6. I'm going to leave the last 2 and I'm going to call them, I think there's 8 and 9 left. Yeah, so I'm going to call 8 and 9 pastures just to show you an example of how you would do that. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back to the top of this page, and up here is forage suitability groups. It wants me to go to the web soil survey, but you know what? I already have that open, right?
Yep.
That's still open from Internet Explorer. So I'm just going to go back where I was there, scroll back to the top. Sorry about all the scrolling.
Slow down.
Yep, gotcha. And here's the simple thing. I brought all my fields in here and took out all the ecological site data. Even if those fields were pasture, I took that data out. I just didn't put field numbers over there. I'm going to take all my data, which is already in here. The AOI is already set for all the fields. I'm just going to run a different report. Well, the report I'm going to run this time is suitabilities and limitations. And I'm doing this from memory here. Vegetative productivity, I believe. That's not right, is it?
I don't remember.
Let me think about this. I gotta look at my list here again. Land classifications, my fault. It's in the instructions. I just had to think about it a second. Land classifications, and I want to go down here to ecological site. I know that sounds crazy because we're getting a pasture, right? So, but look here. If I go to ecological site name, then the options are to get these reports. One of them is forage suitability groups. That's the way they're set up to get forage suitability group information out. Sorry, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's in the instructions, line for line, what you click on. So I'm going to ask for that report by viewing the rating. And down here, voila, as they say, there is the report that we want. I'm doing the same thing. I'm scrolling down and only highlighting through exactly through 100, right-clicking on a blue cell. Where are we at on that screen there? Way behind. Scrolling down through 100, right-clicking on a blue cell, copying. Okay, I'm going to minimize this. Back to the grazing tool 3.0. I'm going to right click and paste again, keeping destination formats. And And my point here will be to only complete field numbers for number 9 and 10. We're going to call them those pastures. Oops. So here's 9 and here's 8. Excuse me, 8 and 9. That's what I wanted. Right? Because I put field numbers in there and field numbers on the ecological site, that's it. I'm set up. I can click finish. Big blue button at the top, finish. Now what it's doing is it's doing all the work that, okay. So,
Wait a second.
would you like, okay, there's a question that will come up here and I'll wait till it comes up for you. All right. Would you like to have all plant communities available for each ecological site and forage suitability group? Hey, that would be neat. I think I will. Well, what will it be? That was a little joke there. And so then you say, yes, I want that. I got to tell it which MLRA I'm in. 102A, I say okay. So what is it doing now? Same thing it did before when I clicked MLRA and the plant communities buttons. It's setting it all up for us. And this time, it's going to bring in all the ecological sites and forage suitability groups. It's going to bring in all the acres. It's going to bring in all the AUMs that it knows about. All right. So here we go. MLRA is now set to 102A automatically. In this case, Plant Communities button is automatically checked because I told it that. And here's all the data that it dumped in. All right. So I'm going to wait till it scrolls up here and shows you the data. All right. So most of it's done. Why are there blanks in here? Okay. Well, number one, Web Soil Survey data says that the ecological site is thin upland, and our data that we put in from ESIS says it's thin loamy. So there is no connection. And Emily, that's probably one of the things we want to try to tackle. We can solve that problem. I don't know which is the most current. I don't know which is what you really want in the state. I really don't know any of that. But we've got two different data sets.
Yeah.
So we can solve that problem, these types of things. How do you solve it out in the field working with this? I think the simplest way, we know thin loamy is really, thin upland is really, thin loamy is the same site. Okay, so I'm just going to I'm going to change thin upland to thin loamy. Then I'll have the plant communities in here. This is 102A. Each one of you have different things we'll need to work on, I think, on their data. But it's not a tremendous job, it's just a cleanup job. So if I'm going to change every one of these thin loamies, there's quite a few of them in here, thin uplands to thin loamies. I'm going to first sort on ESD, sort on the site. That way, all my, yep, gotcha. All my thin loamies will appear in the same section, same area. And I will do all this at one time. So here's all my thin uplands, and I would change these to thin loamies. Somebody showed me this little trick the other day. Sometimes where you have selection drop downs, you can't get that corner highlight selected to copy. But if you have two of them and you highlight them both and you want to copy that down a long ways, now I can get a hold of the bottom one. And what it's doing is copying really two cells at a time. But if I just go through the last that I want, everything comes out just fine. Little trick. Okay, everything's changed to thin loamy. We've got plant communities and everything. Now there's not another issue, is there? Whoops, sorry, I went too high on that. I want to show you, I want to resort them by track and field. This is by track and field number here. Okay, and I want you to notice this. These last two fields, 8 and 9 are pasture, and the rest are all range. Okay, and that's because of how we numbered the fields in that tab. And so at this point, I am going to show you something I didn't show you on the other one. I have field 11, cropland, and it's 40 acres. And I want to put some AUMs in for grazing cover crop, because we've decided that, and you may decide this after you run through all of your fields and say, I don't have enough AUMs, so then you come back in and add some cropland fields and add a cover crop. But right now I'm going to show you how to do it. 40 acres of crop. Well, how many AUMs is that going to produce? Well, I've got a sheet right to the left of this. It's called crop. Okay. I'm going to say it's field 11. The grazed acres is going to be 40. Crop harvested is, I'm going to plant spring wheat in this field. And now if the stubble is grazed, enter the yield. Well, yes, I'm going to leave the stubble and I'm going to plant no-till into this. So he's going to graze the stubble also. So I'm expecting a 45 bushel yield on my spring wheat. Well, just the crop aftermath would give me 15 AUMs. But I'm also going to plant a cover crop. Well, I've got it set to a mixed cover crop. Some warm, some cool season. And you can change that. I'm going to leave this at mixed, and I'm going to say I'm going to begin grazing at, how high am I going to begin grazing it? If you need some help, click on that little help button in an MLRA 102A. You know, typically, if you get your cover crop planted by the 1st of August, it can grow to 20 inches by the end of the season. Okay, but am I going to wait till the end of the season to go in and graze this? Probably not. I'll probably jump in there when it's about 15 inches tall. Okay. If I planted it September 1st, it would only get 12 inches tall. So somewhere in between here, I'm going to start my grazing. So I'm going to use 15. That's some logic you can use. You can talk to your agronomist. You can talk to your resource conservationist. You know, whoever can help you there. But in this particular case, I'm going to start at 15 inches grazing. When am I going to end grazing? Oh, it told me end grazing at 4. That was kind of a typical thing we kind of try to preach for soil health. You can overwrite that and change it, but I'm going to leave it at 4, so we're going to get out when it's 4 inches tall. That would give me, right here's my number I'm looking for, AUMs per acre. 2. Go back to the forage inventory. I can anticipate 2 AUMs. I need a growth curve also. Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to need a growth curve. What's my growth curve? Up here lists my growth curves. Crop aftermath is 50-50, October, November. Create your own. If you just type over create your own and put in there cover crop maybe. And say, I'm going to create my own. Well, I kind of know that in September I'm going to probably get about 20% of this growth that can be grazed, and then I'll probably get 65% of the growth occurring in October, and 66, how about 65? And about 15 here in November. I grow a cover crop in my garden every year. I know kind of what they look like around here. So there we go. I just made myself a cover crop growth curve, and it's number 8. So I'm going to put number 8 in the selection for growth curve, and it creates my AUMs, calculates my AUMs off to the right side. So I'm going to wait till this catches up a little bit. Where is it? What's it doing? 8.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, you're caught up. All right, thank you. Okay, so I showed you the crop, showed you how to correct this. Emily and Rod and I did a test kind of run on this here the other day about how we're going to talk about this. Rod, and I've heard others say this too, so he's not the only guy, that he doesn't like these 0 acres, 0.12 acres, 0.3 acres, all in field 1. Well, that's the way the data comes out from Web Soil Survey. It's the way it would come. The way we wrote it to come out of NRCS's database too. It's all the inclusions and that kind of thing in there, and it's a prorated deal. And I can see why you don't want to look at it. On the other hand, if you change your plant communities on the major ecological sites and forage suitability groups, these minor ones don't really matter, okay? So you can do 2 things. You can kind of ignore them, and if I say this field 1, oh man, it was the best blue stem needle grass, piece of range grass I've ever seen. The chances are, that would be like a similarity index of 95, the chances are that the loamy overflow in there is also close to a 95, just because of the way he grazed it in the past, that type of thing. The chances are. So I would make sure you get the predominant ecological sites, get their plant communities set right, and the others, if it seems like they're very high, go ahead and switch them to high if you want. If you ignore them, it's not that big a deal. They're 0.13 acres. It's not going to be much in the total calculation. What Rod wanted to do, which I'm going to show you that you can, he wanted to just get them out of here. Okay, so let's say everything under an acre he wants to get rid of. Well, what I want to do is I want to include the total acres in this field back into these other ecological sites just to have the calculations come out right for your acreages. So I'm going to highlight the 4 that I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to look down here at the bottom, and it says the sum is 0.9 acres. Okay, so if I delete those, and if I add them back into any of these, I'm going to add them back into the largest ecological site. So 0.9 it'd be 7.13. So if I change that to 7.13. Now I put those acres up in there. Now I can, the first 4 columns now, remember you can do what you want with, I can delete that. Okay?
And hit the delete key.
And hit the delete key. Don't right click and find delete on the little menu. That actually moves cells, the right clicking and hitting delete. If you hit the delete key, it just clears the cell. And we just want to clear the cell. Okay, delete the information in the cell. All right, so I've done it on that. I'll do it on one more real quick here, and then we won't take the time to do it on the rest. But here's your acreages in number 2, all of them below 1.85. Somebody do the math on this for me because I don't have a calculator sitting. What's 1.85 plus 7.52? Ryan's on it here.
1.85 plus what?
7.52.
9.37.
9.37 is our new total of our, and then I'm going to take and delete all of this information here. So you can see what I'm doing. You can clean up your data if you want to do that. Then resort it by track and field, and I should only have 2 rows of information for 1 and 3 for 2. So, and there it is, 2 for 1, 3 for 2, and so on. So now you got the predominant sites, and then come through here and set your ecological sites for all those, and you'll have your data cleaned up. It'll be easy to use. And all of this will take you a matter on a fair-sized ranch. I mean, in an hour you can go through all this. It's quite efficient, I believe. I wanted to then show you, if I use this view fields AUMs, okay? So here, there are times when a person would want to know how many AUMs are in that field. Not by ecological site or any of that. You know, that's what this is telling us here is by ecological site. Field 1 is 10 acres. Field acres is 10. And it has a animal unit month per acre value of 0.78. And so by field, I can look at that. How uniform are my fields set up? Maybe I want to redraw my bound. I haven't put my fences in yet. Maybe I want to move my fence over a little bit, get it more uniform so I can move cattle more on a 3-day basis instead of a 1-day and a 5-day. You know, those kinds of things are possible if you know what your AUM per field is. So that's just kind of handy to look at. Stocking rates, that's the stocking rate of that field basically. Okay, now I am going to have to take a moment here and look at my notes to see what I have covered, haven't covered. Oh, let's go back here on this one, and I'm going to set every one of these to brome grass. Now, why am I doing that? Because, number one, it happens a lot over here in the east. We've already taken our rangeland to the point where we've allowed all of this to. I'm gonna set the wetland ones to the medium plant community because they don't have obviously the brome grass. So. And I can't just copy them down because I don't know that everyone's worded the same way or exactly the same. So I'm going to go through and take the time to do this. What I'm trying to do is actually make this, because there are very few ranches that would be at the lowest plant community on all sites. So you really do have to go through this plant community and decide what you have in your fields for your situation there. So I'm continuing to do this. There is a faster way, actually, now that I think about it. If I would have sorted these out and limey sub-irrigated set to smooth brome grass, set a couple of them, and then highlighted those two, I can do all the limey sub-irrigateds like this because I know limey sub-irrigated all have that exact wording for their site. And loam, pasture, okay, range here again. Okay, I click on a couple of those for loamy, set them to the same thing, and then I can do this copy business through my loamy. Okay, a little faster. Now we'll be done in just a moment or two. Is that thing catching up to me, what I'm doing, or?
Yeah.
Staying up?
Pretty close.
Okay. Sub-irrigated. Saline sub-irrigated. All right. And I think I set these already. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. You can always right-click on a cell and copy it and then go through all of them and paste it. I mean, that's another way to do that. As long as these are the same, I can copy that plant community all the way through. Thin loamy. I'm going to set that to brome grass also. Okay, we're just about got her.
These were great managers.
Yeah. These are typical. people over here, really. I mean, we just got a lot of invasion of brome grass. Now, what can we expect in the future on a deal like this? It take quite a bit of management to bring us from, let's go to the loamy site, to bring us from that smooth brome to get us up to blue stem and needlegrass. Number one, we got to have some blue stem and needlegrass left out there. Number two, we got to put quite a bit of management in to get there. And so, are we ever going to get there? Maybe, maybe not. We're probably going to improve our AUMs out there by harvest efficiency, and then we'll inch towards the blue stem and needlegrass condition or plant community, but it will take us a little while to get there. Brome grass is just so tough to, but it can be done if there is some. So in the planned condition, if he says, well, what's the most I could expect if I really work on this for 10 years and I really put the effort in and we rotate and we do everything you say, water, fencing, well, we could switch these to the higher plant community and increase our efficiency, and we could see what the AUMs are, and he'd be surprised of the increase in AUMs out there. And then he says, well, what's the worst case that could happen to me if I just keep beating her down and I there's still grass, some grass, there's an inch or two of grass left out there. What if I take that? You can switch all these back to the Kentucky bluegrass. And that's what will happen if he keeps doing this. Eventually you'll get more bluegrass and less brome grass. And the AUMs will go down, and you could switch it to 25% harvest efficiency, and you could show him what the result would that would be for his ranch. So, yeah, kind of a useful tool. Now, I set all those so that I'm gonna leave that for a second and show you how that'll work. Okay, let's set up the animal inventory. So, you guys know, I changed a couple things on here I wanted to point out. Okay. So I'm going to set this to 1,200 pound cows and 30 of them. Okay. And over here, like before you pick feed or graze, I'm going to feed up until May. I'm going to feed in November and December, I know that. And if I check before, you can only check one box or the other. The whole month either had to be feed or graze. I have changed this now. So if you check both boxes, splits the month in half. I'm going to feed half the month, graze half the month. It's just get you a little closer on these charts and so on to what's really going to happen. So I'm going to graze it in June, graze it in July, graze it in August, and graze it in September, and I'm going to split it in October here, just to show you how this works. So, we've got down below there the summary of what's going on. Okay, total grazing available 176. Total grazing demand 173. Well, I hit that pretty close, didn't I? Okay. My feed shortage for the winter when I'm feeding them, 242 AUM short. Let me show you something that's kind of handy, and that's this grazing chart. This tells you the same information, but in a little different way, in a graphic form. So to demonstrate that, let's pop over here, first of all, way over here to the right about our feed. I'm short 242 AUMs of feed. That's because I haven't put any in the animal inventory yet. That would amount to 97 tons of hay. Oh, so let's just go back here to show you how that works. If I buy 100 tons of hay, 2.5 conversion factor, okay, go back to this chart, all of a sudden I've got 3 extra tons of hay. So, you can see how that could be kind of useful to know about how many tons of hay you're going to need over winter, and so kind of a useful thing there. based on our numbers, how much a cow eats and so on and so forth. Obviously, there's some supplemental feed could be involved and all kinds of things going on there. But AUMs is probably very accurate. So then what about this chart? Well, the interesting thing is the green is the grass that's growing. And so we produce a bunch of forage and it gets less and less as we go along in time. And then all of a sudden we have a 40-acre field of cover crop and it's available and growing and so on. So and then the blue is the demand, half a month in May. Remember we went half months in October. And then the demand's the same across the board all summer long. What is this shaded pink area? This is the surplus above the line and the deficit below the line of AUMs that we are at. So what it's telling me is I can graze and I'll have a surplus, and then this deficit, what I'm doing here is I'm using up some of this surplus that's older grass that's now maturing, but I'm going to come back and graze it. And so the deficit is in production of grass at that time. You see, you're producing less than I'm grazing. But in the end, if I graze everything I got to proper grazing use, including the cover crop, I end up with a tiny surplus. So that's kind of what that's telling you. It's also telling me that, boy, I don't have any fresh grass very much for them here in August and September. Well, that's pretty true with everyone that has Kentucky bluegrass and Rome grass. They don't have any warm season stuff out there that's fresh, green, and growing. And so that's why we try to tell them to plant some warm season grass to produce during those months that they're grazing here. Have more nutritious grass for their cattle, better health, everything. I'm popping back to my forage inventory. I'm looking at what we had it set for. Present condition, 25% harvest efficiency, okay, and the plant community the way it exists today. All right, so that is what we could expect. So when you might want to save this for your present condition to look at in the future, where you started with, go 5 years from now, what did we say this stuff was, what did we say our production was going to be? You may want to save it. You definitely, in our contracts and planning, you probably want to print your present condition and have it documented. So when you come back in here to do a planned condition, okay, boom. All right, so I've got a harvest efficiency for the planning, okay. Let's say that we are going to bump that up. We're going to have, well, what exactly are we going to have? We're going to have, what does it say here? 25 season long, 35 grazing rotation at least twice through rotation, and 3 to 8 pastures. That is something we got from the from your range cons, and so we're gonna make his plan that way, and so we're gonna bump it up to 35% harvest efficiency. Did they see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's one thing we're gonna change. We're gonna leave the plant communities the same for now, and so we're gonna go to the animal inventory, and just by kicking that up to 35%, I have a surplus of 42 AUMs. We either lost somebody or gained somebody. I hope it was gained. Okay, so let's look at our grazing chart. Ooh, look at that. Now we got a surplus the whole year because of our grazing efficiency. So what do we do with that? Well, I don't know. One of the things we could do is say our plan is we're going to run 35 head on this, okay? We're going to graze them the same time. We're going to do everything the same, okay? We're still, in the end, we're a surplus. We have some of that deficit during the warmest part of the season. We're consuming some of the mature brome grass is what we're doing there. All right, but probably can live with some of that. See that a forage suitability group that's not suited for seeding is going to come in with no AUMs. So you will want to stick something in there because unless it's like a deep marsh, because deep marsh you aren't going to get any AUMs out of. But lots of ours over here are just too steep to seed. They're east slopes or something, and you will get some grazing on them, some small amount. So you can add some AUMs to that. You're going to run into this case, and I think we're going to try to solve this. If one of the very first examples Dave Steffen gave me was he had fields coming from one side of a MLRA and the other side. He was right on the line. So they popped in here with, ecological sites. If I used 66, I think it was in his case, and in 66, some of the ecological sites are in that data, but the fields that came from across the line, they didn't have the ecological sites in the database for 66 because they came from whatever that one is, 63A or something. So you're going to run into cases where this isn't perfect. It's not hard to come up with good estimates for your AUMs because you're right on the line. If you use that reset, go back to a different MLRA and just look at the ones that come in and write them down, and when you go back in the other ones, type them in. It's not that hard. Very few of them end up right on the line. You're going to have some can come in that are non-sites for ecological site. And so they'll be blank. I would not add any AUMs to those because non-sites are ones that we didn't give ecological sites to. And so therefore we didn't say they produced any AUMs. So there are a few things about the data coming in. You're probably asking yourself right now, well, but how do I get that shapefile to work with web soil survey? Well, that is an issue. You have to have a shapefile to upload to web soil survey. So I think we're going to go through a couple of things here. In the instructions on that right-hand column, it will tell you, it will say to you, need to upload a shapefile to web soil survey. Well, here's one set of instructions to do it if you use ArcMap or have ArcMap. Well, in our CS offices, we all have ArcMap. If you are moderately fluent in ArcMap, then I think you can do this. Emily, when you tried this, did you try it this way? Did you manipulate a shapefile? Okay. So I am barely moderately efficient in ArcMap, and I could do this, so I think you guys can. So the key to this is this part name column doesn't exist in any of our shape files. CLU doesn't have it. Something you'd export out using the CLU won't have it. You're going to need to add that and put a number or name of the field in there. So what these instructions do is start you out here with a CLU, a set of fields that's in a CLU layer. And actually, let me look at that. I used the example I got from Stefan, I guess. This wasn't a CLU. This was one he made up himself. And so that's why this attribute table has so few columns in it. This is one he, I think, just made up in ArcMap. Okay, yours is going to have 40 columns in it, the attribute table, something that was exported out of the CLU, but it won't have part name, and you're going to need to add that. Instructions work the same way. Open it up in ArcMap, and you just basically, I don't know that I want to go through this with you, but I mean, I could if we wanted to. You're basically following these instructions. You're highlighting these fields that you want. And this is like the, let's say that this is the CLU layer. You're going to export them, export the data, and then you got to tell it where to put it, okay? And then once you've got that shape file, that's what you're doing. You're writing out a shape file. Once you got that shape file written out, now I'm going to add this column to it. I'm going to click on this table, and here's, it's going to, I'm going to click on add field in the little drop down that comes up, and you're going to type part name. It has to be a text. You got to change that to text if it's anything else, and they recommend 20 characters in length, so put 20 in there. So those are the three things you really have to do to add this part name column and have the right attributes there. Well, actually, the attribute is the field number that you put in there. And then basically it's just telling you here how to fill that with your field numbers. A couple of different ways you can type them in, and you can also set the column equal to one of the other columns, like if NRCS or FSA, that's where the data came from originally, it may already have a field number in there. You can just set it equal to that particular column by clicking on the column and double clicking on that column, and it'll put it in this box down here, and you say okay, and it sets it equal to that. So there's a couple different ways to edit that column once you create it. If you think, oh, and then then you're going to save it. It's going to have what, 6 files in a shape file. You're going to highlight all 6 of them and zip them. Okay. That's a process, but it can be done. I just discovered a different way that's for those who don't have ArcMap and didn't create their fields using ArcMap. You actually can use Google Maps to draw your polygons and to then add the part name column, and it will kick out a KML file, and in 3 seconds you can use this converter, and I've given you links to all this stuff, converter to convert that KML file to a shape file, to a zipped shape file. They actually zip it for you. So to be honest with you, we can run through this right now and get something ready and send it up to, I'd say it's probably would take us 10 minutes. All right, I'm going to hopefully open up Google Maps here. Let me think about this. I may have to know my password okay, I printed these instructions. Where are they? So I could, because like I said, I've done this one time, but it works. I thought it worked fantastic.
You should be logged in.
Not as my personal self, though. Okay, so walk me through this. Okay, log in. Okay, here we go. So I need to be in Google Maps. Okay, I need to go into the menu there. I need to go down to Your Places. Okay.
Just a second. Okay.
I guess it might take more than 10 minutes just for the screens to refresh. Okay, need to go to Maps. All right, Maps. Okay, these are some of the maps I created in the past. This is one I tested yesterday. Okay, so down here is Create a Map. Okay, it's going to take me into the map maker, and this says, click on the 3 dots, it says New Map. Boom. I need to click on the untitled map, if I remember right, and change the name of it. So I'm going to call this Mark's Map 2. Mark's Map 2. Okay, I put a description in there if I want. Tell me if I'm getting ahead.
You're good.
Good. Where am I at here? Second 3 dots, okay, so then I'm down here to the layer, okay, and I am going to rename the layer, and I'm going to call this as ranchland, or rangeland. So I could, in theory, keep the range and pasture separate. Base map, I want it to be the satellite version, and zoom into my land. So this is the part that I am not thrilled about. However, I've used Google Maps in a way where I typed in the search bar the corner of the section that I wanted to go to when I was doing appeals and when I was doing determinations. And if I typed in 428th Street and 39th Avenue, and if the syntax had to be just right, it would take me right there. I don't know how to do the PLSS. I never figured that out in Google Maps, but there's probably a way. Anyway, for now, what I'm going to do is put you over here by Brookings, South Dakota, and you're going to have to find your section. Well, I'm, 3 miles south of Volga in this one, and that is Volga. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do something right in here, And so I got to kind of know my land to do it this way, so I can find it. Okay, zoomed in.
Keep going.
Draw a line. Add a line or shape. Right there. Boom. Add a line or shape. I am ready to draw. And this is the part I like about this. Is the drawing the lines is very much just like you would do it in ArcMap. I mean, you're clicking, you're dragging, Now, if I zoomed in closer, I could be more accurate. Double click. I have one polygon. What am I going to do there? Nothing. I'm going to close it. Okay? Now I'm going to, sorry, Crystal. I told her I'd remind her. I'm going to draw again. I'm going to draw the second one, okay? Now if I get real close to this one, it'll hook onto that line. I like to do that. I think you'd be doing that almost all the time also, is matching up field boundary with field boundary. Excuse me. Like I said, very much like any other thing you'd be digitizing. So it's kind of intuitive, okay? There's the second one. Okay, backing off. I'm just going to do 2 for now, if you don't mind. Click on this. Open a data table. Now whoops, I got that one highlighted, so I kind of want to click, there you go. Now I want to do this. I want to open the data table. Here's where I attribute it, which is so cool. This is the part I didn't think you could do, and it took me a while to figure this out. I'm going to click on this drop down. I got to have a column called part name for it to work in Web Soil Survey. Well, guess what? They let me insert a column after this one. What do I want to call it? I want to call it part name. Tell I was excited when I did this. And text, it said text. If that's something else, you got to change it, but it actually defaults to text. Here, all I have to do is click on the cell and put my field 1 and field 2. It's that easy. Okay. All right, so where am I at on my instruction? Make sure I do everything right. Part name. Okay. I could have typed track 12. T12 space F3. I could put anything in there I wanted to if I wanted to keep track of tracks and fields. Okay, close that window. All right, highlight this field, highlight the next one. Hold my control key down, highlight them both. Okay, got them both highlighted. Next to the map name, click on this. And here is export to KML. Oh man, this is just what I want. I want to export to a KML file. It's all in the instructions. Okay, I want to do the entire map. That would mean if I did 2 different layers, range and pasture, it would take them both. Okay, and so if you choose, you could do only the rangeland if you wanted to, but I want to do the entire map. Download it. Okay. So down here it says, do you want to open or save? I want to save as. So I know where it went. I got to know where it went. Okay. I'm going to put it in the same shapefile folder that we've been working on. Okay, it went to that. Okay. So Mark's Map 2 KML. That's fine. Save that. I just digitized my ranch. Well, I only had 2 fields, but okay, it took me 5 minutes. All right, and so now I'm going to leave this open, but I'm going to minimize this. Actually, I'm going to close this. I'm done.
So
Literally, I'm done with this, if I remember right. Okay, so now I'm going to close maps. Okay, so now I want to use this link here to convert my KML file, because a KML file won't work in web soil survey. Okay, but here's what's so neat. Browser, add files. Okay, now I put it in here. So where's that KML file?
Right there, up top.
At the top.
So slow down a little bit.
It won't work. Just keep going. It won't work. Right there.
Okay, there's Mark's Map 2 KML.
Just hold it.
You good?
Nope.
Okay, you just say when I'm good.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, so there's the file. I open that. Dumped it in there. I want to continue. This layer, I want an Esri shapefile when I'm done. Convert now. And that's all there is to this. And watch this. Boom, it's done. Download it. This is so slick. Save it as. And I want to put it in the same folder, and it's going to, here you want to rename this. Okay, so because it's going to call this the same file name every time, I'm going to call it Mark. What do I call the other one? Mark's Map 2. Zip. Dot zip, has it got the dot? Yep. And it's complete. It says down here, I'm going to shut this whole business down. Don't need you anymore. Minimize you. Okay, now what do I want to do? If I go to Web Soil Survey, I can go through this tool. Okay. So now I'm in assume I'm in the grazing tool. I go to Web Soil Survey. And I want to start it. I want to set my AOI from a shapefile. I want to browse for it. It's called Mark 2 Zip. Open. Set the AOI to that. I beat the clock on my end.
There you go.
I'm in. I got field 1 and 2. It attributed it. Oh, good enough for Web Soil Survey. I can go in here and do my thing for ecological sites. I am telling you,
That is pretty simple.
this is simple. If you do it, I did it twice now and I almost didn't have to look at my notes. There's the data. I copy that, paste it with the destination formats back in that grazing tool and boom.
You're golden.
Yes. So I made it.
Yeah.
But if it were me, I'd come back to the office, come back to my home, and I would draw these fields in. Even if I took paper maps to my ranch and identified where the outside boundary fields were, like in the old days, and then predicted where I wanted to have the new fences go to split fields and all that, I'd bring it back and I'd do this I would actually do this every time under Google Maps. It is so slick and easy because it works.
Yeah.
And then I can change it pretty fast. And the other thing is, if I go onto my phone right now, because I'm logged into Google, that map will come up, and I can open it up in an app for my phone. Is it useful? No, I haven't found a useful one yet. I have found one that opens up and I can draw. Oh, it's just a pain. It's hard. So there's not a really good one that I've found yet. Okay. I'd like to show you that there is a save and a print reset button in the forage inventory. The save button is just like you would use if you did a file save. So it's not a huge deal, but it'll point you to the folder that you want to save this particular spreadsheet, and it sets it up so that it saves it as a different file name, and you can edit that also. The print reset button is basically after you input your data, which in this case we've got quite a few rows of data. Then if you would print preview, it will only show you the first page. If you hit the print reset button before you print preview, then it will show you all of the data is set up, and here in this case it's 2 pages worth, and so it formats it so the last row has one more row beyond that, and it figures out how many pages that are needed. So it's pretty handy to hit that print reset button if after you get all your data in and you're ready to print. Okay, on the animal inventory, there is a button where you can actually add livestock animal types and the equivalent animal unit equivalents for them, and we'll pop in there. Here's the button here. So you can actually add a type. There's a mule, and he's one, I'm just making this up, 1.2 animal unit equivalents. And you could also edit the horse, your horses, maybe you have 1.3 animal unit equivalents. You can edit those numbers here also. When you're done, click here to complete the edits and return. And so when you come back here, your list of animal types now will include the one we added, which was a mule, and it'll be 1.2. So that's the way that works. I want to show you how to handle out-of-state land. If I have forage inventory for this land that I've already put in here, and I want to add, he has a bit of out-of-state land, I can use this web soil survey data other, and it goes through the instructions to tell me how to add land. So if you have both in South Dakota land and out-of-state land, put your in South Dakota land in first, just like we have here already. And then you could come in here and go on to Web Soil Survey, and you could find your out-of-state land, and it'll allow you to append it to that area. So if I want to put some land from the Sand Hills in here, in Cherry County, Nebraska, I am going to zoom into a piece of land. I am going to set my AOI by drawing it here, just to show you that if that were my AOI, just as an example, when you use out of state or out of South Dakota land, we're going to import this information use a little different report from Web Soil Survey. Not all states. We didn't put data into this spreadsheet from any other state other than South Dakota. And so South Dakota land, we're looking up ecological site information, and we have data in our spreadsheet, that we match up to the ecological site and the forage suitability group information, and get our animal unit equivalents, or animal, we get our, we create from that the, I'll come up with it here. So in this particular case, when it's out of state land, we would use Soil Data Explorer, and we go into vegetative productivity. So we're going to use vegetative productivity to actually come up with the AUMs produced. So we went to normal year, range production, and I want to view the rating. And so in this particular case, I've got a highlight starting with the first map unit again through 100%. That's the same as we did before. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet. Okay. And in my spreadsheet, I'm on this Web Soil Survey Data Other. I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste matching destination formatting as I did before. And those map units will pop in here. And then I'm going to click Finished. And it's going to ask, oops, excuse me. That's, I'm going to click yes to append, but I forgot to do one thing, and it's not going to append the data down here because I forgot to do one thing, which was put a field number in here. So I'm going to put a field 10 in here. That was my fault. Then I'm going to click Finished. Then I'm going to say yes to append the existing data. Append to. So then it pops in field 10 at the bottom, and I keep all my existing South Dakota land in here, and it comes up with the AUMs for normal production based on the vegetation information from Web Soil Survey. And I want to point this out. There's a little note here where the total range production in this method includes current year's growth of everything, leaves, twigs, woody plants, and so on. And some of this is not palatable vegetation for your animals. And I think we just need to keep that in mind, that this is everything produced as far as the vegetation goes out there. And so that number may be higher than what you want to use, but in the sandhills there may not be a lot of leaves and woody vegetation. So as a range planner, you just have to make the decision, what number do you want to use. But this at least brings you in a number that you can start with. And then you actually have to add a growth curve to that. And once you do that, it will calculate out your AUMs for you for that particular AOI. So that's the way you handle out-of-state land. You handle it differently. I have looked at Minnesota, some land next to I think Brookings County into Minnesota, and that Web Soil Survey information did not have the vegetative production populated. Nebraska and North Dakota, I've looked at those. Those seem to have that populated. So each state may or may not have populated the data, and you'll have to just look into that. So then I want to describe the schedulers that are in here. And there are several schedulers in here. There are 4 of them, as a matter of fact. And the first one we can use is what we called a time control scheduler. But basically, the way you use it is you make your list, and that's all of your fields that are available that have been entered into the forage inventory and have AUMs produced. So fields of hay back there won't be in this list. They don't have AUMs produced. And so number 11 was a cropland field, if I remember right, and number 10 was that out-of-state field. So I'm going to I'm going to go back to the forage inventory. This 10 we have two 10s here in our list, and I think we need to make, we can't really deal very well with the same track and field number. So I am actually going to change this track number to 1, and then that will allow me to differentiate between, and I'm going to remake my list. All right, so now I have a track 1 field 10, that's the Nebraska land, and I have a track 0 field 10, and that's the South Dakota land. So I can differentiate, and I also can delete this field 11, which was cropland. I don't want that in my grazing system right now. I will utilize that in the fall, but I don't want to use it here. And then I can copy this first row, this first column, and paste it here so I have a continuous list of fields, and then I want to delete this one because it's a repeat of track 1 field 10. So now I have all my grazable fields here for my rotation that I'm going to do. I would complete the few boxes over here. I'm going to graze 1,200 pound cows. I'm going to graze 30 of them, and it actually tells me the animal units on the grazing system. I need to enter the desired rest period. So when the comment boxes will tell you what type of information they're really looking for, and this is when the rest between the grazing events, and when the grass is growing fast, you want to move them rather quickly. And so I'm going to enter 30 here, and I'm going to enter 45 here. You can use your prescribed grazing standard to figure out what amount of rest you should put in there. And in the end, it tells you the average AUMs per pasture. It tells you the minimum and the maximum, and you can go over here by pasture. And this works well if you have a bunch of uniformly sized pastures that have relatively the same amount of AUMs in them. It'll give you the minimum and the maximum grazing period in these columns. So I can be in this one 3 days. I can be in here when the grass is growing fast. I can be in here 5 days when the grass slows down. And so as you move through these pastures or paddocks, this is some good information to have as far as when to move the livestock. Of course, your actual movement will vary depending on the year's rainfall and heat units for that year and how much the grass has recovered. So you'll decide that based on the condition in the field. But this will give you a good idea of how to make a plan for the coming year. So we also have a weekly scheduler, and that's a little different setup here. You can, again, make your list of fields. I'll just quickly show you how this works. And with these paddocks or pastures so small in size, this may not be the most efficient, it may not be the most useful scheduler, because we're talking about grazing 1 week at a time here, and some of these pastures may not even be able to have a week's worth of grazing in them with our 30 head. So I did the same setup there. I got rid of my field 11, which was cropland. I'm going to graze later in the season. I enter my animal type, which I'll say is a 1,200 pound cow, and I'm going to have 30 of them in these pastures. And I'm going to copy that information down throughout the first run through these pastures. Watch this number here. Sometimes it likes to use a fill the series instead of copy the series. So we want the same herd in there throughout this rotation. And so if I start grazing in May and I graze herd 1, I'll put a 1 in here for herd 1, and I graze 1 week, then the available AUMs is 11.9. I've already used 8.1 of them. And so if I graze a week in each one of these, that's kind of the way you set up your rotation. Each time I'm indicating herd 1 is going to be in here. And just to show you how this works, this will give you a visual idea of how much of the available AUMs you have taken with that 1 week of grazing. Okay, so if I graze through all of these one time, then you get, then you get some idea of where I'm at. Okay, so I've grazed through every one of these one time, and I've taken a portion of the AUMs. I've almost taken all of them here. So I'm going to go back and graze a few of these a second time. And matter of fact, I'm only going to graze 2 of them a second time to show you, and that's the 3rd and the 4th a second time. And we're going to come in here and graze this one. Excuse me, I said the 3rd and the 4th. Here's the 3rd, and here's the 4th. And so you'll see what's happening up here is it's taking more AUMs and getting closer to the total amount that are available. And so here on the 4th paddock, we have actually turned the shading red, so I've gone beyond the available AUMs in that paddock, and then there is no green left, so I've gone beyond the available AUMs in the chart also. So you can tell when you've, you might say, overgrazed that pasture. In addition to that, you can adjust your warning here in the dark red shading to light red shading based on the percentage of overgrazing. So you can play with that a little bit and see how that works. This overgrazing is based on the philosophy of the old take half and leave half, and the half that you're leaving is partly the half that you're taking, excuse me, is based on you're taking 50% of it, but only 25% is going into your livestock. The other 25% is grass that the livestock step on, break off, insects like grasshoppers, that type of thing, eat, and that there's the livestock produce feces, and then that falls on grass that isn't able to be ate. So you're actually, the cattle are ingesting 25%, then there's this waste of 25%, you might say, that can't be eaten, and then we're going to leave 50% of the grass out there. So it's take half, leave half philosophy, and that's when it gets to 0, your half has been taken. And it's based on the AUMs produced based on your forage inventory. And so if your harvest efficiency there was calculated at 25%, that's how many AUMs you would got per pasture. If you bumped it up to 35%, because you're going to rotate through here more than once, then you'll have additional AUMs available for that pasture. So you can see how this can work for you with the weekly scheduler. You need to have fairly decent sized pastures to use this. We have the exact same thing in a daily scheduler, and so then you can figure out, I'm going to graze 2 days in a pasture, 3 days in a pasture. It works exactly the same way as the weekly one did, but it's on a daily basis. What I'm going to, one of you guys, or several of you guys, came up with a suggestion that I build this in-out grazer. Just give me the dates to go in and out. Well, of course, the dates are going to change depending on the season, the precipitation, the amount of heat that you get in growing the grass and everything. So these aren't locked in dates, but it's a plan to say, okay, it'll be about like this. So let's build this one right here. First thing I do is make my field list. Okay, what that does is create the list of fields that are available from the inventory that had AUM production. Okay, so I'm gonna, to make this kind of simple, I'm gonna graze through all these fields, and I just said I better do it. Kind of go through 3 times, or 2, 3. Whoops, that's not exactly right. This field is my cropland field, and I don't want that in there. Okay, I don't want 11 in there, so I want these in there. So I can copy and paste these things around until I get them in the order I want. I'm going to delete all this down here for now and recopy. There's the chunk of fields that are grassed and I'm going to graze. I'm going to eventually graze that crop, but I certainly am not going to stick it in there in the middle of the season. All right, so I'm going to graze 3 times through, and these need to fit into that yellow, and they just do. If you had fields that would drag all over that beyond the yellow, what you do is you come down below your map and you start listing your fields again down here. Okay, it will continue, the formulas will continue and all that. Mine just happened to fit exactly in there. My fault, I bumped something there. Okay, so when we get up here to the top, here we go. Livestock number, 35, right? Livestock kind, 1,200 pounders. I'm going to take those 2 items and copy down, because that's going to be the same all season long in this case. Now I got to watch this number thing here. Sometimes you just clicked on this down arrow and it used fill the series. I just wanted to copy the series. All right, so make sure you don't increase 1 cow every field. I mean, that'd be great if that actually happened, but the neighbor would be coming over looking for them, you know. All right, so date in and date out. Here's something I came across that made this so slick, and I want to show you guys. And I'm going to, and I put it in the, let's see. Let me pop over here. Sorry about but I believe I put these instructions. Yep. So in the second column here, in the instructions, here's a handy tip when making a 15D in-out schedule. And it's at the bottom of the right-hand column. And it actually tells you how to write the formulas and where to put them. But I'm going to do it because it is simple. It's easy. I'm going to go back to the in-out scheduler. Here we go. And what I want to do is I got to start some particular day. So I got to type a date in there. So I said on the other thing, I was going to graze half of May, and so I'm not going to start until, in this case, May 15th, let's just say. Okay, so what's my day out? Well, if I write a formula that says equals, okay, well, it's going to equal this, the number of days available to graze that particular field. And I'm going to multiply that times a fraction. I'm going to say 0.2 in this case. Okay, now I'm going to put that in parentheses because I want that calculation to be done first. And then I'm going to add that to this date. Well, what's it doing? It's saying that I'm going to take this many days, I'm going to multiply it times 2/10, and I'm going to add it to this date. So now it's a 1 day, it's actually grazed 2 days, okay, 15th and 16th. So here's 2 days grazed. I got 7 days left. All right, so what do I want to do? I also want to make a formula that says this, the day in, equals the day out. All right. And if I copy this formula down to here, and copy these two formulas down through the first set of fields. I started with 1, I want to end with 9. Okay? So now, having done that, what I've done is said I want 20% of the days grazed on each one. It just set me up a schedule. And I'm ending June 4th. Okay, so you say to yourself, do I want to be done going through my fields one time, June 4th? I'm going through them 3 times. To me, that's not a bad deal. And I think I'm going to continue that same thinking, and I'm going to take these 2 cells, copy them down 1, but I'm going to change the percentage here. Now I want to take 70%, 0.7, of the days that are remaining, okay? So here it's going to take 70% of the 7 days remaining. It's going to graze 5 days on this go round. I'm starting with field 1, and I'm running through field 9. Okay, it set me up a schedule that fast. And now, do I want to be done through the second time about July 30th? Okay, so far that sounds good. Wait till I give you my recovery days and we'll see if we like it. But I'm going to continue this again, drop it down 1, change the formula here to, I'm going to graze 100%, that's 1 of the remaining days. I'm going to graze them all. Okay, and so having done that, I'm going to copy that through the rest. This should actually come out to zeros. Look at that, no days remaining. Perfect. Okay, and it ends August 24th. Let's see if, what's the key thing about rotating grazing that we harp on, and rightly so. It's the days of rest. So how many days of rest did I get on this one? Well, that equals, okay, the day I moved in minus the day I left field 1, right? I got 19 days of rest, okay? And since I got them in the same order throughout the whole thing, this will tell me, here's my days of rest. Now, I want to just look at this. I should be moving fast in the spring on brome grass. I should slow down my movements in mid to late July and August. I should slow my movements down, right? That's what we say in our practice standard. That's what we recommend. So let's look what we did. 20 days. Well, that's maybe a little quick. Is that Ryan? No, it's the standard. Does that fit our standard?
19 days or?
Yeah, I think it's 25 is what's written, isn't it?
Per pasture.
Per pasture is 25.
Yeah, and we have, and Stan's on, and he can, don't tell me, Stan, on the phone, but you can send a message to Emily here. We've used 20 thinking in a real quick movement kind of a thing in the past. It is not terrible, you know, it's not, even though it's less than 25, it can work. Well, here, I'm very close to 20 here, and I increase them as time goes on. I increase the rest, so I increase any regrowth that could possibly occur. So if I weren't strictly talking about brome grass and bluegrass, so I was talking about a cool and warm season pasture with both cool and warm season, more cool and warm, and I gave it that much rest, like in July 2nd, and I gave it 37 days rest, I would expect some regrowth. Whether that's quite enough, I'm not sure, but I would be out there looking at it, and I would, to me, from the plans I've developed, this is not a terrible plan to start with. We're getting up to almost 50 days of rest by August, and that gives it plenty of time for some regrowth if we've got some warm seasons out there. And does it give you any, if it's all cool season grass, what does that mean? Not too much, I don't think, because it's all mature by then. But in the general scheme of things, if you've got some, we're talking ecological sites in general here, if you got some warm and cool seasons in there, give some rest. Then when we get down to September, those fractions that I put in there actually speed it up again. And there is some definite growth in September, so we should maybe, now are we in September yet? No, we're not quite in September here. So that might be our fallacy there, is we speeded it up a little too soon.
Maybe it was a cool August.
Yeah, it's, we do get the rains come about the 20th, it seems like, and so, but on the other hand, if it's all mature brome grass, we're just coming back in and grazing the end of the mature brome grass. I don't know. The other thing to think about is, what do I stick in there? Maybe the guy could grow some forages for 2 weeks and graze them in late July and then kick them into these pastures. It gives you the opportunity to think through some things, where you're weak, where you're strong, that kind of thing. So,
Cool.
Those formulas are kind of interesting. You can play with them. You can just type in the dates here too and go through your pastures 3 times. So just wanted to show you that. We have a archive ability in the Grazingtool also, and to use that, you would complete the South Dakota CPA 16, the record of grazing, and I've gone ahead and entered the information from the producer. He started grazing June 1st. Every 2 or 3 days, he moved up to 4 days here. He moved the livestock into the next pasture, and I recorded each time he moved until September 10th. This summarizes the amount of grazing that he did, how many AUMs that he grazed during the season, and it compares them to the suggested carrying capacity of each one based on your forage inventory. And the red indicates that he exceeded the carrying capacity. The white indicates he came in below the carrying capacity. And so the other thing we can do with this is we can set the current year. I said 2018. I save the current year's data, and then after I do that, it's saving that year to a archive data tab. And what we can do then is we can either look at the archive if we select that particular year, so I could store many years in here, but I can look at how it was grazed in any particular year that I've saved. I can also look at the grazing chart, and it basically does the same kind of thing. 11 was our cropland field, and I didn't say we grazed that. Cover crop or aftermath grazing, something on that order. But I did indicate I grazed these 3 times through, and the total AUMs grazed on the first field was less than the carrying capacity, and so on and so forth. We did overgraze this field 5 here slightly. And so you can keep track of the grazing that you do. You can look back at it any one particular year. You can look at the chart in any one particular year. It works good to keep track of what's going on and have a quick look back and see how things went the year before that, and so on.